I have had probably a few hundred direct messages from buyers that have been affected with sunset clauses, and also I had so many developers that reached out as well, and unfortunately a lot of developers they were not happy with me talking about sunset clause, because in a way it does protect them, which I understand. And then I had a lot of direct calls from builders that have been affected with kind of being stuck in the middle as well. So it's interesting, and so that's why I want to share my views. Are we ready to start filming?
Yeah, ready.
All right, cool. Sunset clause was made to protect developer, and at the same time also to protect person that is purchasing anything from a developer. Sunset clause can go anywhere from 18 months up to 5.5 years. That is the law. Reason why it's great for developer, if they don't complete the project in 5.5 years time, if the construction prices do increase like they have been increasing over the past few years by 30%, there's a good chance they're actually not making any margin, right? Last 5 years has been extremely tough for anybody in construction and property development industry. Every builder who had fixed contracts with developers over past 5 years, whatever his margin or her margin was, could be 10, 20, 30%, that margin was gone because of the increase of construction prices. If builder had a fixed contract of $20 million or $30 million to build a high-rise for developer, if the prices went up by 30%, developer didn't have to help that builder pay for the difference between what original contract was and where the prices actually end up. That is due to price increase of trades, suppliers, COVID being a big factor. So a lot of builders were burned, a lot of them went out of the business, and a lot of developers were fighting for survival. A lot of developers were finding the ways how they can potentially replace the builder who just went bust on them because due to cost increase. And a lot of developers, they were looking elsewhere to see how can they potentially find another builder to replace the first builder, or how can they actually find more money elsewhere to help original builder pay for the difference so the project can get finished. Now, most developers, they would buy, I'll give you an example, they might buy land for $20 million and they want to build 50 apartments. And construction of the 50 apartments, for example, was also $25 million. So all cost of that development is $45 million. You can include funding costs, soft cost, let's call it $50 million. That developer went and pre-sold everything, so hoping that one day when the project is completed, they can make 10, 20 or 30% margin on that building. Now, if the cost of development is $50 million and they pre-sold everything for end value $65 million, technically they're doing really well, they're making money. But if construction went from $25 million to $40 million, and developer had to go and look for money elsewhere so he can pay the difference in construction cost, he needed to help the builder, or builder would go bust, he would have to replace the builder, but that $15 million gap would still have to go there. So developer was hit with, okay, I'm doing this big tower and I'm not making any money. Most developers, to build 50 apartments or 100 or 20 or 200 apartments, they need pre-sales to be able to get lending from the banks. And average projects that most developers would be having would be 3 to 4 years if they're actually building a high-rise. If they are building that project that might take 3 to 4 years' time, they would need pre-sales, and they would, for example, sell 50 apartments of the plan, banks are lending the money, they will start building. And that's where we are getting stuck at the moment. Now, developer needs pre-sales, so he goes and sells everything to people. Second thing is, anybody that wants to buy any apartment from developer, they're buying it thinking in 3 years' time, they've secured something at today's prices, and in 3 years' time, they got a settlement of the apartment. Could be the investment property, could be the dream home that they want to live in there forever. In every contract, most developers would have what is called sunset clause. Sunset clause is there to protect every developer and every buyer. What I mean by that is, sunset clause is the time frame where building has to be completed, and if it's not completed in the time frame, either developer can terminate the contract and maybe sell it for more money to somebody else, or purchaser can terminate the contract if he's not happy with the time frames. Now, this can be good and bad for everyone. In this case, it's really good for developers. Reason why it can be good for buyers as well, because let's say prices went down by 30%. That means every buyer can just pull out, get a deposit back, and not be affected by the downturn because prices went down by 30%. Now, this is where the trick is happening right now. All of the developers that have that sunset clause, those developers are using it to be able to on-sell it to somebody else for 30-40% more. Don't forget, every developer has already lost their margin due to construction prices going up. So if you go back to the chart that I was just talking about, the cost, each developer is already losing his margin because everything that was in his margin, he had to use all that to be able to pay for difference in construction price because construction prices went up. So developer is saying, hey, you know what? I have right. I can terminate the contract, or people that originally purchased it 3 years ago, I can say to them, hey, you can still be in the contract, but I want 30% more. Or they can terminate and on-sell it to somebody else so they can pick up their margin. How is this good for developer? Great, because all of the losses that he has made over past few years, he can offset that by on-selling it to somebody else. For buyers, it's terrible because people that purchased those apartments 3 years ago, they potentially sold their existing properties so they can fund this apartment that they purchased. And that existing property, they maybe sold it 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, so they can settle this. Now, over 3 years' time, over past few years living in Australia, construction property prices have gone up by 30-40%. If developer terminates the contract, they're gonna feel we're out of the market because 3, 4, or 5 years ago, let's say we sold our property for $500,000, so we can settle our unit for $500,000. So they took that money off the table 3, 4 years ago of their own apartment, and now developer is asking them for $750,000. How can they pay for it? Because they sold their own property a couple of years ago, and now they have this uplift of prices going up by 30-40%. The developer is asking, but they lost because they sold their own property 3, 4 years ago. So most cases they can't even afford to actually pay more money. Great for the developer. In this case, it's terrible for the person who purchased it 3, 4 years ago. Now, it can work other way around. In 2009 global financial crisis, GFC, a lot of people purchased apartment, let's say for $500,000, and 3, 4 years later, GFC hit, their apartment was worth $350,000. They were all terminating, and there's one of the largest towers on the Gold Coast, perfect example. So what happened? They were all terminating the contracts, and developer ends up having a tower completely finished and almost zero sales. He had loans from the banks. Banks called on those loans, and that developer that he was working so hard for 20, 30 years lost the business completely. This is not good for developer because we need developers to stay in business. Why do we need developers to stay in business? Because they create jobs, they keep the economy moving, and Australia is a country where we are undersupplied by homes, apartments. So we need developers to keep building. If they go bust, economy can be affected because there will be jobs oversupply, and we are already struggling with demand for homes, and who's going to build anything? So how can we prevent here? And who is right, who is wrong? Now, in this case, developer is trying to protect himself, and he doesn't want, most cases, developers don't want to hurt people that purchase them. Because don't forget, those developers, they needed pre-sales. So people that were purchasing properties for them few years ago, they were really good for them. Why they were really good for them? Because they could never start building anything without those pre-sales. So those buyers have been great for them. So why would you want to hurt those buyers? Why would you want to hurt your own reputation? Because those developers that are terminating contracts due to sunset clause, they can never sell anything off the plan in the future, right? Why? Because they lost trust, credibility. How can industry be protected? This is my opinion how this can be protected, because I do feel sorry for developers, but most importantly, I feel sorry for anybody that has purchased anything of the plan, because now the contracts are being terminated and they are losing 3, 4, 5 years of potential growth. Now, just to mention this as well, sometimes those sunset clauses, they would be there for 5 years' time, so people were waiting for 5 years for those buildings to be finished, and they may be meant to be finished in 4 years, but some developers are dragging construction and everything on purpose for another 12 months' time because they know they got a 50% uplift when it comes to how much more they can sell it, so that they can recoup all the losses that they gain throughout the construction. This is a no-win for anyone. Developer might be able to sell it for more money, but he just destroyed his or her reputation to keep developing anything in the future. Now, mom and dads or anybody buying an apartment, they're affected even more because they missed out on 3, 4, 5 years of the growth. And now they're stuck as well. Not good for everyone. And I can feel everybody's pain. And third, amazing builders got hurt in the process as well, because like I said before, if developers couldn't pay or didn't want to work with the builders and help them with their losses, they would go out of the business. So what's going to happen moving forward? Should this legislation change? Should sunset clause even exist? How can we make this better? This is my thoughts. If I was buying anything from a developer, I would be even more scared with any sunset clause over the next 5 years. Specifically, if I was in Queensland. Tell you why I would be extremely scared to buy anything with sunset clause. There's a good news and bad news. The good news is, I believe construction prices have stabilized. So we shouldn't really have any price increases. So if you buy anything of the plan today for, let's say, $1 million, if you buy an apartment for $1 million from a developer, even if there's a sunset clause, hopefully we're not going to have another COVID where prices will go up by 30, 40%. And hopefully developer can deliver on the time frame that he is promising you he's going to deliver, so that sunset clause won't come in place. But what we have is something bigger than COVID coming. If your property that you are purchasing, that you're wanting to buy, is in Queensland, specifically Brisbane and Gold Coast, we have 2-year construction window where we can build stuff and not be really affected by any price increases. So why do I call it only 2 years? Because we have what I would call another COVID in construction industry, which is not really COVID, and it's called Olympics. Queensland, as a state, we have won rights to have Olympics in 7 years' time. Now, we have won that a couple of years ago. Now, over the last couple of years, we have been just in our planning stages. Our government only made a decision a couple of years ago what they're going to build and where they're going to build all the stadiums, infrastructure, a couple of months ago, which is still in planning. I don't think government is going to start building anything for another 2 years, which means potentially till 2027. What do you think will happen to construction industry in 2027 when we only have 5 years of construction time left to build 10, 20, $30 billion worth of infrastructure stadiums? We are already having shortage of labor in Australia. All of the infrastructure will need to be finished by 2032. Who do you think is going to build it? Where do you think all the labor will go? How will construction prices be affected then? Will any big builder want to build any apartments for myself as a developer or any other developer that wants anything built when they know if I go down as a developer, they're never going to get paid? Or do you think one of those larger builders would rather build stuff for me as a developer or do work for government where they know they're going to get paid? So how will that affect the industry? My prediction is we got 2 years of construction activities happening. After that, unless we open the gates to labor around the world and actually start importing workers, or we start having robots building everything, we're going to be in trouble. So going back to sunset clauses, how can still developers keep building, and how can mom and dad or any investor be protected purchasing anything of the plan? Well, there's really no right or wrong answer here. There's no really answer, because if you are a buyer, you can go to developer and you can say to that developer, you know what, I'm going to buy this $1 million apartment. You're telling me it's going to be finished in 3 years, maybe 4, and there's a sunset clause in 5 years. Well, the way I want to do it is I don't want to have that sunset clause in contract at all if you want me to buy it. So I'm helping you as a developer, but if construction prices go up by 20, 30%, it's none of my business. But then again, you as a purchaser, you might lose again. Because if prices go up by 30% or 40%, which they might be in 2 years' time, developer might go under and you never get to have your apartment anyway. So how do you protect yourself? You can stay strong and say, I don't have a sunset clause. That won't help you. If developer is bust, there's no winner here. Legislation can't help anybody because construction prices control where your property and your contracts and developer and everybody else is going to end up being in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. So we can go and look at the safe option. We can say, hey, you should only buy finished product. But if you buy finished product, there won't be any. Because developers, they can't start building unless they have pre-sales and unless they're using 100% of their cash. But I guarantee you, there's barely any developers that have enough money in their bank account to actually finish 50-story tower just using their own money. I hope you're following what I'm trying to say and how nobody can win here, because as a buyer, you kind of got no control what you can tell developer, because he can or she can only do what they can do. They need your pre-sales, but if they don't give you sunset clause or give you sunset clause, well, what does it matter? Because if they can't finish it and if they go bust throughout the project, you're going to be hurt. But I think I got a solution here. As a buyer, what I would say to any developer, I will buy, this is the only solution that exists. If you own existing property worth, I'm going to call it $1 million. So you got existing property worth $1 million here, and you are buying apartment for $1 million, hoping it's going to settle in 3, 4, 5 years' time. What I will do, and what should be done, to protect everyone, all the buyers and all the developers. If your property is worth $1 million and you're buying apartment for $1 million and that apartment is going to be finished in 3, 4, 5 years' time, in the contract, what we should have is, one, don't sell your own property today, because if you sell your property today thinking, you know what, I better sell it now because in 3 years' time I got a settlement of this $1 million apartment. Well, if this apartment goes up to $1.5 million and developer is not finishing in 3 years, it might take him 4 years or whatever the sunset clause is, and him being kicking you out, and you sold your property for $1 million today, and developer is asking for $1.4 million, you're short $400,000. So solution here is this. What needs to be in any contract with any developer, you know what, I will give you $1 million, but I need 6 months time in the contract. For me, 6 months prior, I need to have a clause that I can sell my house. So you, as a person who owns the house today, don't sell your home today. Sell it 6 months prior to completion of the building that you put apartment under contract. So that way, if your apartment is worth $1 million, you're not selling it today, and this apartment goes up to $1.4 million, even if there's a sunset clause that wants to protect developer and he wants to use it, well, at least your own apartment or your own existing property has gone up towards $1.4 million. So you're actually not losing anything. People that are losing stuff today specifically is investors or mom and dad or anybody that sold their own properties 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they put that money in the bank, and now 4 or 5 years later, developer is asking for, hey, I'm going to use sunset clause, either give me 30% more, or I'm going to own sell it to somebody else. Well, at least that gap between where you sold your original property and where this settlement needs to be, even with more money that you need to pay, at least that gap is smaller. So technically you might not be losing anything. Maybe this is the solution how you can protect developer so you can keep building again and not lose money. And also developer is getting more money to be able to pay the builder for price increases. And maybe this is a solution where everybody can win. You tell me if there's any other way. That's the only solution that can protect everyone here, in my opinion. Because no legislation can help you if the building never gets finished, then you lose again. But if you have that in the contract, you have 6 months time to sell, and then if the developer can't settle with you within that 6 months time, maybe he will have penalty. So maybe this is the only fair solution. It is sad to see one of the largest industries in the world, in Australia, being so affected, because everyone is hurting. Builders are hurting because there are amazing builders that have been in business for 20, 30, 40 years, and they've gone bust due to construction increases. The amazing developers that also they got hurt because they are in a business and they take risks. They take a lot of risks building those big towers. So one day they can deliver great product for beautiful people that are moving into it. They can call that home and they can go and build another one. But if they go bust, who's going to build the next up? Who's going to take the risk? And then you got, people that are purchasing those apartments. They are being hurt badly because they miss out on 30, 40, 50% of the growth and they can't maybe afford anything today. So how do we all win here? Because we want this amazing country called Australia to keep moving forward. We want developers to keep developing amazing stuff. We want builders to keep building stuff and everybody's creating jobs. And we want average Australian to be able to afford their own home and not miss out on anything. So communication is the key, and I think solution I've suggested might be the only one, so everybody can survive.